According to a new statement by the Israeli Defense Forces, the army conducted an operation within the Gaza Strip today, attacking multiple Hamas targets before withdrawing. Videos of overnight action released by the military showed armored vehicles proceeding through the border. The military statement posted online said that the incursion was carried out in preparation for the next stages of combat, and this is seen as a possible reference to the large-scale ground invasion that Israeli leaders have threatened as part of the war to destroy Hamas. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that the country is steadily preparing for a ground invasion. However, he declined to provide any details on timing or other information about the operation. He also said that the decision on when forces would go into the enclave would be taken by the government's special war cabinet. Israel has carried out days of intense bombardment of the densely populated Gaza Strip following the October 7th Hamas attack. Shortly after Netanyahu's address, the Israeli government held a war cabinet meeting in Tel Aviv. French President Emmanuel Macron has expressed that it would be an error for Israel if it launched a massive ground invasion in Gaza. Although the French president reaffirmed Israel's right to defend itself, the warning came as Macron held talks in Cairo with his Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who also urged efforts to avoid a ground invasion. Sisi called for a de-escalation, ceasefire and return to diplomacy, saying the lack of a political horizon had fueled the current war. Now, worried that the Gaza bloodshed could exacerbate tensions across the wider West Asia, Arab leaders have repeatedly pushed for a return to a political process. Macron echoed Sisi's support for a two-state solution, the cornerstone of negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians that have been stalled for years. The United Arab Emirates has sent humanitarian aid to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip from Dubai's Royal Air Wing Airport. The Emirati aircraft carried around 10 tons of vital supplies, including medical items and kits. It was the sixth flight sent by the International Humanitarian City and its partners to the people of the Gaza Strip. Now remember, limited deliveries of food, medicine and water from Egypt restarted on Saturday through Rafah to besieged Gaza as humanitarian supplies run critically short. Israeli rabbis and relatives of those believed to be kidnapped and held by Hamas militants gathered in Jerusalem to pray for the release of the hostages. The event, called a Global Day of Prayer and Unity, was organized by a Jewish religious school and institution. The ceremony got a live broadcast where people were seen praying for the welfare of the abducted and missing persons and called for their immediate release. The speakers included Meirav Gonen, whose daughter Romi is believed to be among more than 200 people taken by Hamas militants into Gaza. The Gaza Strip is in dire need of fuel to power its medical facilities and transit. Authorities from Gaza's Al-Aqsa hospital have said that it could be a matter of days or even hours before the facility is forced to shut down completely. The hospital needs fuel to power its generators that keep its desalination plants running and supplying clean water. Doctors in Gaza have called upon residents to donate any stored fuel they may have. Local doctors have emphasized that fuel is especially critical to support patients in intensive care and the operating rooms. The shortage is also affecting the function of paramedics and civil defense crews in Gaza. Taxi drivers have been helping carry the wounded to hospitals, but energy shortages have put a stop to that as well. Israeli military spokesperson has said that there have been inaccurate reports by relief workers regarding critical fuel shortages in Gaza, and this comes after A report stated that if fuel is not received into Gaza, then humanitarian operations will be forced to halt. He also said that Hamas has been storing fuel inside the Gaza Strip that would be enough to provide generator power for many days. He suggested such an output could be used to run hospitals and water pumps. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has rejected accusations by Israel that he had justified Hamas militants' attack on Israel in his statement. Earlier this week, Guterres had urged for civilians to be protected in the war between Israel and Hamas, voicing concerns about clear violations of international humanitarian law in the Gaza Strip. Now, the UN chief also expressed that he's shocked by the misrepresentations of his statement. Guterres told the UN Security Council that it was vital to be clear that war has rules, starting with the fundamental principle of respecting and protecting civilians. Israel's ambassador to the UN had called Guterres' speech shocking and called him to resign immediately. Hamas claims that it launched a rocket towards the southern Israeli resort city of Eilat, which is some 220 kilometers from the Gaza Strip, and the Israeli military has claimed that there has been an impact in the outlying area. There was no immediate word of any casualties in what appeared to be the longest-range Hamas attack of the Gaza war. Now, in a video posted on Telegram, Hamas showed the long-range missile with a caption that said that they had bombed Eilat. However, media agencies have not been able to verify those claims yet. Russia failed for a second time to get the minimum amount of support needed for a UN Security Council resolution on the Israel-Gaza conflict, and this deepens the Council's deadlock over any unified response to address the crisis. Earlier at the UN, Russia and China vetoed a US-drafted Security Council resolution calling for pauses in hostilities to allow for food, water and medicine to be delivered to Palestinian civilians. Russia's rival proposal advocated a wider ceasefire but failed to win the minimum number of votes. Israel has argued that Hamas would take advantage and create new threats for civilians. Now, both drafts condemned the attacks by Hamas and urged action to address the worsening humanitarian crisis in the Gaza Strip. Russian Defense Ministry has released a footage of what it called Russia's ability to deliver a massive retaliatory nuclear strike by land, sea and air. And this comes hours after the Russian parliament voted to revoke the country's ratification of a global ban on nuclear testing. The ministry said a Yars intercontinental ballistic missile had been fired from a test site. There are concerns that Russia could move to resume nuclear tests to try to discourage the West from continuing to offer military support to Ukraine. The exercise comes at a time when Russia is locked in what it casts as an existential standoff with the West over Ukraine. Meanwhile, the South Korean Navy held combined maritime drills with the US Navy and Army as part of the annual field training exercise. The Navy also released footage of some of the drills and said that both militaries conducted various operations against enemies' possible provocations at sea and strengthened joint operational capabilities. This 4-day combined drills involved about 30 naval ships, maritime patrol aircraft, maritime operation helicopters and fighter jets. At least 22 people have been killed and more than 50 have been injured in two mass shooting incidents. Numerous emergency personnel and authorities are responding to an active shooter in the main town. The police have also released a profile of the person of interest, where the 40-year-old has been identified to be Robert Card. He's a trained firearms instructor believed to be in the Army Reserve stationed out of Saco. Card was also reported to have been committed to a mental health facility for over 2 weeks during summer 2023 and was subsequently released. The White House has said that the president has been briefed on what is known so far about the shooting and will continue to receive updates. The Sudanese Armed Forces and paramilitary rapid support forces have announced that their delegations are in Saudi Arabia's port city Jeddah to resume a new round of negotiations. They said that the negotiation is one of the means that may end the war and hopefully complete the full implementation of the Jeddah Declaration. They stressed that the resumption of talks does not mean cessation of armed confrontations against rapid support force. The Republican-dominated House elected Republican Mike Johnson as the next Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. The 220 to 209 vote elevated Johnson, third-time congressman, to the Speaker's chair that had fallen vacant. Johnson is a Louisiana lawyer and an ardent supporter of the former President Donald Trump. He will now assume control of the sharply split House Republican majority and confront the imminent danger of a government shutdown the next month. In his first action as the Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives, Johnson called up a resolution supporting Israel. The resolution calls on Hamas to immediately cease attacks and release all hostages, reaffirming U.S. solidarity with Israel.
Majority of the votes cast is duly.
U.S. President Joe Biden has urged the Congress to approve the AUST legislation this year at a joint news conference with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. Biden said that Australia is making a significant investment in U.S.'s ability to produce submarines as part of this deal and that he's confident that AUKUS funding will get done. Albanese held summit talks with Biden that included the AUKUS project and expressed that he's also confident in the discussions with Democrats and Republicans that there is very broad support for the AUKUS arrangements. 25 U.S. Republican lawmakers urged Biden in July to increase funding for the country's submarine fleet. The U.S. submarine industry is hoping that it can improve its production rate to meet demand both from the U.S. Navy and AUKUS. Even as India is raising the issue of Canada giving safe space to Khalistani terrorists, Bangladesh has now called out Canada for harboring the killers involved in martyring the country's founding father, Sheikh Rahman. Bangladeshi Minister Muzammil Haq has spoken against Canada allegedly sheltering killers of the father of their nation. The minister has said that killers should not get shelter in any country in the name of political asylum. Hurricane Artis roared into the Mexican beach resort city as a rare category of 5 storm and one of the strongest to ever hit Mexico's Pacific coast. Footage showed downed palm trees and traffic signals in the streets with windows smashed and cars partly submerged in floodwaters. There have been no immediate report of fatalities. However, authorities have stressed that large swaths of the region were without power or phone signal. Now, this is making it harder to gain a detailed picture of the destruction.
Estamos aquí en el estudio, platicamos con la gente. Hasta este momento, ¿tú consideras que sigue habiendo saldo blanco después de la magnitud de los destrozos que estamos viendo?
Un solo poste que conserve la línea vertical, los anuncios. Ajá.
Digo que como bien dices tú, muchísimas gracias por todos estos detalles, sobre todo por las imágenes inéditas que
Environment activists gathered in front of the Bolivian Defense Ministry to demand measures to tackle the raging wildfires causing harmful air pollution in many cities. The air quality index has worsened on Wednesday to 194, which is considered very poor and dangerous for human health. The group of activists demanded the government to declare a national emergency policy to protect the biodiversity in the fire-hit areas. According to reports, there are at least 16 active fires. Crowds are flocking to see thousands of Halloween pumpkins that have been elaborately carved and illuminated in the Santa Monica Mountains near Los Angeles. Called Nights of the Jack, the event is a Halloween wonderland that features everything from dinosaurs to aliens to SpongeBob. The event uses between 4,000 and 5,000 pumpkins for the exhibit, and it takes around 25 minutes to traverse the course. This Halloween spectacle will be open till November 1st. Social media platform X